North Korea says it's ready to use its nuclear deterrent in what it calls a sacred war against the South. The North Defence Minister's statement was reported by state media there. The minister accused Seoul of deliberately stoking tension by staging successive joint military drills with the US next to the North Territory. He said the latest exercise, one of the largest in the South's history, was an outright preparation for an attack against Pyongyang. The manoeuvres involve heavy military machinery, fighter jets, missile launches and hundreds of troops, and it was held just 30 kilometres from North Korea. The series of war games comes in the wake of the recent cross-border artillery exchange that killed 4 South Koreans. Let's get some reaction to this now from Stephen Goins. He's a foreign policy analyst joining us on the line from Ottawa, Canada tonight. Thanks for taking the time out to be with our team, Mr. Goins. And this is just the latest, isn't it, of the North's many, what's the best way to say it, raging statements, I guess. How serious do you think Pyongyang is this time round about what it's saying, though?
I think that Pyongyang has very few options. You must recognize that North Korea is a military pipsqueak in relation to South Korea, whose military budget is many times larger than North Korea's. And South Korea is integrated with the preeminent military power in the world today, the United States. So the options available to Pyongyang are very limited. The best it can do is to develop what deterrence it can, but it's clearly being provoked, and it has been provoked for some time, ever since the current South Korean president, Lee Myung-bak, has come to office. He's come to office with a mandate of confronting North Korea, which is sharply different from the mandate of 2 previous administrations, which have sought détente and have worked toward a confederation. Lee's policy is to confront North Korea, to seek its collapse and to absorb it into the South.
Is that really what it wants? After all, it would be absolutely bombarded by millions of people coming from the North. Is that really what's on the cards? I would have thought that's something the South partially dreads. Is that what's behind what it seems to be now, provoking the North by these games?
Absolutely. I mean, when the North says it's being provoked, it obviously is. We'll take, for example, the live fire exercises. South Korea has conducted 47 live fire exercises this year alone. There was a 48th one that has been carried out yesterday. That wasn't initially scheduled, but one South Korean officer said that it went ahead anyway because of the tensions on the Korean Peninsula, which only makes sense if the intention is to escalate and aggravate those tensions. South Korea certainly seized on any opportunity it can to escalate tensions. There was the sinking of the South Korean corvette, the Cheonan, which was immediately blamed on North Korea over North Korean denials. And there are many in South Korea who do not believe the official inquiry that says that the North Korea was responsible for that sinking. Then we have the artillery exchange that happened on November 23rd, which has been blamed on North Korea. However, the exchange was triggered by a South Korean Marine garrison on an island that lies very close to the North Korean coast, firing live artillery into waters that North Korea claims as its own. You consider that, you consider President Lee's hostility toward North Korea, his policy of confrontation, de-escalating war games, and it's hard not to conclude that South Korea is trying to precipitate a fight, to pick a fight, and trying to provoke its northern neighbor. And
briefly, does the US have any role here? Is it fanning the flames at all? It is, of course, pledging continued support to the South and slamming the North.
Absolutely. I mean, the United States policy for the last 60 years has been to seek the collapse of the North Korean state and its absorption into the South. The Lee government is more closely aligned with U.S. foreign policy goals on the Korean Peninsula than, say, the governments of Presidents Roh and Presidents Kim. In South Korea, President Lee is oftentimes seen as a puppet of the United States, and the area around his office is called by many South Koreans the new United State of South Korea.
Is there ever a danger, do you think, that the North would ever play the card that it's brought out yet again, talking about maybe using its nuclear deterrent? If, heaven forbid, a sacred war ever did break out there, could that happen? And which nations are likely to be drawn into the conflict?
The North could use its deterrent. You never know what's going to happen when there's a game of brinksmanship being played, as the South Koreans obviously are. I don't believe the South Koreans want to bring this to an open state of conflict, and I don't believe they actually want the North Koreans to retaliate. But when you play this kind of dangerous game, anything can happen. I believe the Vice Chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff had mentioned that it's very important that the United States control this escalation so that it doesn't get out of hand. I don't believe that Pyongyang wants to retaliate, but if it's attacked, it really has few options but to retaliate, but at the same time recognizing that if it does, it will be pulverized. Of that we can be almost certain. It will be pulverized by the United States, by South Korea, which are far more formidable military powers than North Korea is.
Well, this latest nuclear threat comes, of course, just as Russia and the US are imposing unprecedented cuts on their atomic arsenals. Is what's happening on the Korean Peninsula a blow to the whole ideal of a nuclear-free world? How's it going to affect that?
I think what's a blow to the whole idea of a nuclear-free world is the idea of threatening small powers with nuclear weapons, as the United States does. President Obama speaks of his dream of having a nuclear-free world, but that's a nuclear-free world which is free of nuclear weapons except in the United States. One of the principles of non-proliferation is that you don't provide smaller countries with a motivation to acquire their own nuclear deterrent. The United States has targeted its strategic nuclear weapons on many North Korean sites, and it's because of that that North Korea has decided to acquire a deterrent. It is also was named by the Bush administration as one of the three axis of evil powers. And it became clear to Pyongyang that it could be next on the United States hit list, and that is one of the reasons why it acquired a nuclear deterrent. So if you want non-proliferation, if you want a nuclear-free world, you have to stop threatening other countries with war and invasion and nuclear annihilation.
Stephen Goins, a foreign policy analyst on the line from Ottawa tonight. Thanks for your thoughts on the RT News channel.